This video will discuss the account of the Mount of Transfiguration in Matthew 17 and provide contextualizing information to understand some parts of it. Beginning at verse 1. And after 6 days Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John his brother, and bringeth them up into an high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. To begin with, this obeys the law of witnesses, which is important because messengers bearing priesthood keys are being sent, likely in fulfillment of the promise to Peter in the previous chapter that he would be given the keys of the kingdom. The mountain setting should remind us of other occasions where people have come into the presence of God, such as Moses in the mount in Moses 1:1, and receiving the law, Exodus 24:12-18. Nephi being carried away into an exceedingly high mountain in 1 Nephi 11:1, and other theophanies. The other place where these experiences often take place is in the temple, as in, for example, Isaiah 6:1. Overall, the scene in this section is very similar to that experienced by Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery in the Kirtland Temple when they received priesthood keys, and indeed we might infer from Doctrine and Covenants 124 verses 28-30 that this must take place in a temple when one is available, while when this is not available, a mountain is often seen as a fit alternative. Continuing at verse 3. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias talking with him. Elijah, as we usually call him, Elias is the Greek form, was taken up into heaven by a chariot of fire. Moses the Lord took unto himself, as we understand from Alma 45:19. So he was also taken up into heaven rather than entering the promised land, possibly one of the more glamorous prophetic retirement options and generally more sought after than other popular options such as extreme old age and martyrdom. The key thing to realize, though, is that both were reserved for this ministry, as well as their later ministry restoring keys in the Kirtland Temple. Resuming at verse 4. Then answered Peter and said unto Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If thou wilt, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for thee, and one for Moses, and one for Elias. While he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud which said, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him. The bright cloud is sometimes referred to as the kabod. See, for example, the link that I've placed in the notes to an Interpreter article talking some about this, which protects human beings from the hazards of the immediate glory of God. Note that God here bears testimony of his Son, because it is through him that we are saved. As the JST on John 1:19 points out, And no man hath seen God at any time, except he hath borne record of the Son. For except it is through him, no man can be saved. Resuming at verse 6. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their face and were sore afraid. Falling on one's face is actually a rather frequent response to theophany. For example, in Genesis 17:3, Jacob fell on his face when the Lord appeared to him. Joshua 5:14 shows a similar case in which Joshua is receiving a divine messenger. Balaam does the same in Numbers 22:31 when he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way and his sword drawn in his hand. This also occurs in a number of temple settings in the scriptures. For example, we have the dedication of Solomon's temple in 2 Chronicles 7:3, where they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement and worshipped and praised the Lord, saying, For he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. We also have a similar display during King Benjamin's address in Mosiah 4:1, in which the people had fallen to the earth, for the fear of the Lord had come upon them. Resuming at verse 7. And Jesus came and touched them and said, Arise, and be not afraid. And when they had lifted up their eyes, they saw no man, save Jesus only. And as they came down from the mountain, Jesus charged them, saying, Tell the vision to no man, until the Son of Man be risen again from the dead. Again, as with the temple, we are not always privileged to share openly sacred experiences. In the case of the apostles, they were given a specific charge not to disclose their experience until a particular event had occurred, Jesus' resurrection. Now, they didn't quite understand the resurrection at that point, so it seems likely that they initially thought Jesus was figuratively telling them to never relate the vision. But when he was resurrected, it all likely made a good deal more sense, and they shared what they had seen and heard with divine approval. In Doctrine and Covenants 63-64, we read, "Remember, that which cometh from above is sacred, and must be spoken with care, and by constraint of the Spirit. And in this there is no condemnation. And ye receive the Spirit through prayer, wherefore, without this there remaineth condemnation." We might also point out, in connection with this, that the apostles didn't receive the Holy Ghost until after Jesus' death and resurrection, and so prior to this time, they would not have the Spirit to guide them in knowing when might and might not be appropriate in the Lord's sight for them to share their experience.